I'm sort of doing this for to put it in sort of in the public record because you know how it is when you have in the privacy of your own soul, so to speak, you do your own sort of prayer, meditation, contemplation, if you will, about the relationship that you have with the rest of the cosmos and the relationship that you have with yourself, right? And then the interface that you have with everything else it is that you're aware of, that is aware of you, right? So I began contemplating on a lot of things that Patty Broussard had shared about the nature of the things that she was sharing, of the knowledge that she has, with things that became sort of unknown to me, if you will. Like, I don't experience those kinds of things. I've never experienced those kind of things. I don't experience beings that have spaceships and have weapons and things that kill people or even need to defend themselves against something that's predatory in nature. I don't ever experience anything like that, ever. This is all new to me. So I had to sort of figure out, well, explain that to yourself. So a few minutes ago, I began realizing, because you sort of have a looking glass here, you can look down on your own timeline. I do that all the time to sort of examine how all the events that occur, because every event that occurs that you become aware of is traveling through the cosmos, your consciousness is, at a particular rate of speed. Okay, so you can meter, if you will, the frame rates of everything that you're experiencing on the visible light spectrum holographically. Okay, so when I was looking back at my childhood to sort of put this into a greater perspective of some things that a few people have said that I was able to relate to, one was Dolores Cannon, when she talked about how Source had sent souls, if you will, when they got the call to come into Mother Earth because of the amount of parasites that are here feeding on our energy field and essentially destroying that which is living energy. Okay? So when I thought about that, and then I thought about the nature of why I experienced myself in this living energy field the way that I was, and then asking myself questions in the mirror about the nature of how I relate to being in a planet and having a relationship with all the other units of consciousness that are here, I began realizing, particularly in my youth, how I was always wanting to find a place where my energy wasn't being molested by other beings. Okay? Which means, is there anywhere that you can go to be left alone where somebody isn't wanting energy from you? Either because you're out in nature and somebody says, hey, I own that property, pay me. The Indians don't perceive the cosmos they live in that way, because Mother Earth doesn't charge you anything for everything that is here that is living energy. So when you realize that, because you are that, because that's what it means to be in love and service to others, you begin to realize, how did these beings end up in our world? Because this is our native home. We don't do that. How come they do that? Well, that's the first clue that they're not from here. Okay? So when you start adding up all the damage that's been done to the living energies of a living planet, you begin to realize, how'd they get here? Where'd they come from? So this is where I was going to get into the material side of things, because when I began looking at myself and understanding, trying to put this in a perspective that I get a better understanding of where I'm at now and where I was at then in relationship to how we process all the experiences that we have throughout our lives, right? And what gives us greater meaning and purpose for the things that we do and why we experience the things that we do. So I began realizing, and this is sort of both a shared experience in the way that a student and sort of a a facilitator of sharing experiences and knowledge of how one being, one unit of consciousness, my living spirit, experiences being part of the cosmos. Because for me, it's all about living light, which is what love is in living spirit. So therefore, I'm a reflection of what that is, so I'm not going to do something against myself to destroy what it is that I am. Okay? Because that's how it works. The cosmos is a mirror. You're in the mirror. So what it is that you do on the outside is a reflection of what we do to ourselves on the inside. So this is when I got into the matter density particle form of things. Okay, I don't think of myself and prefer to have a relationship with matter, particles. Okay, so for example, you can see that when I began realizing that I always preferred to be in nature, which is living energy, because I am living energy. So for example, when things are taken from nature, whether you're digging iron ore out of the ground, cutting down trees, picking flowers, killing animals, whatever comes from nature thus gets processed, and then you see all that stuff in storefront windows. And then people work at jobs to do that in order to buy those things that come from nature. Okay? So I never wanted to attach myself to things that were taken from nature, in which people work jobs that process that stuff, and thus I use my energy in order to get money, in order to buy things that came as the result of raping a planet. So I realized when looking at my early childhood, it's like when people wanted things that I had that was in material form, it's like I can't get rid of these things fast enough, which what that really means is I can't get rid of the particles fast enough. Which means I'm not wanting to be and have a relationship with the particles and the matter. Which means being in a physical body, because it slows me down. So when you begin to realize how it works in the field of electrons, or if you will, pulsed electromagnetic energy, I do not perceive the cosmos in matter form, if you will. Okay, which means it's not the matter form that is important to me. Okay, you can have all the material things you want from me if you want them all, because I'll give them all to you. Okay, it's not the matter side of things that I put value in. It is the living spirit and the living spirit in nature that has the greatest value to me, because everything that is in nature is living. That's the difference. Instead, what we do is we take from living energies in order to make things that become dead, if you will, in order to use dead money that comes from dead light to buy dead things, instead of living in nature and being a part of what you are with nature. And the difference between the two of those, when you measure it between a black hole and a white hole, you get the message and why they ran 7 seconds of darkness. Okay? That's what demons do. So when you have a relationship with demons and don't realize you have a relationship with demons that hide behind what looks like a human costume and don't know the difference between what they are and what you are, then you're giving energy to experience a demon. And the result of that is what happened in nature. And that gets into the whole idea of why they're known as self-indulgence and perversion of nature. Now, for me, I was able to know that at a very young age, because the first thing that I noticed that they do with all their technologies is to pervert and fuck up nature. And of course, naturally, you can collect all the data on the quality of the air, the quality of the water, the quality of the soil, and all the rest of it. Okay? So it's sort of an oxymoron or basic logic that tell you that if you're not going to have a peaceful and harmonious relationship with that which is giving you free energy, a basic life support system that we draw from in order that everybody can thrive, if we're going to destroy that, then what do you think happens to us? Okay? Because that relationship is the mirror. You begin to realize we're destroying ourselves as a result of having an interface, giving consent, and choosing to experience what I believe his name is Bartzis, the guy who's the galactic historian. He says we become responsible out of our own free will to create our own hell realm. A hell realm. So the hell realm that we're experiencing is the hell realm that is in our mirror. That's what we're experiencing, a hell realm. Because imagine that everywhere that you went, if you turned on tap water, for example, and you got spring mineral water out of that, that's running 8.4 pH. Everywhere that you went and you're buying food is living energy, which is keeping your pH up. Imagine that everywhere we went, we're breathing 21% oxygen. Now, I know what it's like to experience something like that because I have something like that I can draw from that I've experienced, which is what allows for us to have the purity of our energy, the purity of our spirit, and the purity of our mind, because we're not doing things that represent sadomasochistic self-suicide, because that's really what it is. So at some point when Patty said to me she took the gloves off, I think I'd probably take the gloves off too, wouldn't you? How do you take the gloves off against your own self? I walked by a store the other day where, you cannot make, this is a lot like that film, They're Alive, with Roddy Piper. The pair of sunglasses, when they begin to realize, the world that I'm living in is bizarre world. How did this happen? It's inverted. Everything is in reverse. If you've ever read the comic book called Bizarro World Superman, there's a reason why that particular comic book came out. That's a reflection of, wow, look at Bizarro World. And then you had Superman. Inverted and what's natural. So I walked by a business last night that was a dog training business. And it had the big words out in front of the window that said behavioral correction, which basically means is that if you have a dog, okay, that you want to reprogram, we'll help you reprogram it. Okay, remember I talked about fear-based dogs, love-based dogs, why they hybridize everything, why they're always fucking with nature. They just can't leave anything alone. They don't want anything to just be in its own natural state and have an appreciation and a beauty for it. It's like everything needs to be captured, cut, killed, taken down, or put in a cage. It's like, it's everywhere. Particularly when you walk through cities and towns. And this becomes, and this is what's, I don't like to use the word frightening, but it's when you examine it from the perspective of where you're at in your own coursework, if you will, wherever you happen to be at any one single moment of no time, and you become aware of things, of the relationship that you have with, I'm experiencing a sign over there that is represented by the unit of consciousness that is operating that business. And it's like, Jesus, how did I end up in a place like this? It's insane. Behavioral correction. So um, it reminds me when Patty Broussard mentioned to us one time about 2 out of every 3 people that you meet on this planet are not human. Okay, so and that's cool. I've never had a problem with that. What I always had a problem with that is that imagine somebody comes into your house and decides to start wrecking it. Okay? And you begin to realize that I'm used to being able to go up to a spring wherever it is and be able to not worry about the water that I drink is not trying to poison me. Okay? And yet when you go look at the water quality, for example, that comes out of the San Francisco tap water and what they put into that stuff, you get the message. So this is where I see the election basically as a separation between those that are at least aware enough to understand that they wanted to eradicate all of the demons, in the sense that the amount of criminal crimes, if you will, the amount of corruption, those that want to put all their energy into the matter side or the particle side of self-indulgence and a perversion of nature obviously has to be eradicated. Because all you have to do is look at all the data that most of all the biologists, particularly, I looked at all the data that Guy McPherson put up, and he was a conservation biologist at the University of Arizona. And almost all the data that he came up with and said, listen, humanity is going to self-extinguish themselves by the year 2040 at the rate at which things are collapsing in an ecosystem, okay? So that's what I went to go study, because when I was around 33 years of age, I wanted to go after all the biggest polluters, which basically means going after those that are fucking with the girl on the planet and destroying all the living energy that is providing for everybody on the planet. Okay, which for me would have been the big energy companies. Exxon, Shell, all them people. I wanted to go after them. So that's one of the reasons why I went to the University of California, Irvine, to do all the study that I did there so that I could help mobilize communities, proactivists, if you will, to take these energy companies down, because the energy that they're taking out of the planet, the oil they're taking out of the planet, is burning up the consciousness of the living spirit that is in that oil, which is the girl on the planet. Okay? Most of the ships that you see coming in and out of here do not run on oil. Okay? I mean, go figure that one, right? Okay? So that's one of the reasons why they wanted to keep everything hid. They wanted to keep all the stuff for themselves, see? Kill everybody else off and then come above ground so they can be able to take this planet and have it for themselves. That's the nature of the kind of beings that we're talking about here, which are extremely parasitic, which means they represent, wherever they go, an existential threat to everything that is living. Those are your Draco. Those are your Nazis. Those are all your parasites. These are not source light energy producers in which they're running a high-speed Merkaba where their cosmic antenna is broadcasting love and light wherever they go. That's not what they are. They're an inversion of that, which is why we had 7 seconds of darkness, see? They love low density, see? Which means long waves of vibration. So in order to maintain a low wave vibration, and they're in an energy field with those that are running high speed, what happens? They're draining our batteries wherever we're at. So that means that as long as they are present on this planet, how is anybody going to be able to get their spin speed up? That means that they represent a threat to a classroom for students that come in here that are trying to ascend. That's the whole idea, is to prevent everybody's timeline from ever ascending. Because when you measure your timeline and you realize that you lost more light than giving more light and you don't ascend, well, how much of that had to do with programming by artificial parasitic intelligence and people being aware enough to know how that works so that at least they have an informed choice? that, hey, guess what? You're here as a student, and if you can maintain more than 51% of your light that shows you're giving off more light than you're taking, then guess what? You graduate. Well, how many children knew that when they came in here? Okay? Which means if information is being hidden from children because they're being told nothing but lies and they have an interface with parasitic artificial intelligence, how are they ever going to know the truth? They won't. The truth about the world that they believe that they live in will all be based on what's a hell realm instead of a heavenly realm. So that means that heavenly realm, Laniakea cosmic antennas have to come in here and start broadcasting higher speed waves of bringing more light, which is bringing more love, which is bringing more truth. That the real cosmos, the source from which all living light comes, loves us, because that's what I am. So that becomes a difference in a frame of reference. Hey, I'm experiencing a hell realm. Now I'm experiencing somebody with a smile on their face that is experiencing a heavenly realm through their own heart wheel. How'd you learn how to do that? So when it begins in childhood and teachers in those classrooms are beginning to tell the truth about the nature of our relationship with the rest of the cosmos and all the other star systems, we can begin to do what? Restore what was lost in knowledge, which is held within all the light. We used to have an old saying that talks about keeping everybody on the planet like treating us like mushrooms, keeping us in the dark and fed bullshit. That's exactly what they do. They're not ever going to tell you the truth because they don't live in the truth. They don't generate any source light of what love is to tell the truth and not live in any fear of telling it. They're the opposite of that. And you can see the inversion of everything that they present by being able to see the difference between a white hole and a black hole. The difference between the speed we run and the speed they run. Which is a difference in what? Density. The density that they love to occupy and the density that we're seeking, the highest density, which is the highest light, where all the light is, where all the living spirit is. So when we realize we are what love is in living spirit, then we know what we're experiencing is who we are, not who they are. So that's why the election really is a moratorium against demons. People have finally woken up and realized that all these masqueraders hiding in political positions of power are all demons. Because they are. That's why President Trump was the first guy that ever ran for political office. If you look at everything that he put his name to, were things that were trying to help people. Okay? Because this country was being sold off. Okay? That's obvious. To another group of demons using artificial intelligence. You can imagine what happened to all those people over in China. You talk about a horror story. You talk about having their freedom taken away from them to even think and express themselves freely. Man, that's the good news. So anyway, that's my morning wake-up call. Have a great day. The sun is up. The energy feels good. We're headed in the right direction. We won this. I know that. We won this. You know how you know that you won it? Here's something you might want to think about when